I never imagined that something as small as a pair of cufflinks could rip through 12 years of marriage like a bullet through glass. They weren't mine. That was the part that didn't make sense. I've never worn cufflinks in my life, not once. I'm the kind of man who rolls his sleeves up, fixes what's broken, and doesn't need to be noticed for it. I live simple. But that night, under the glowing lights of the Moon Ridge Hotel ballroom, I saw them. Silver, shining, impossibly clean, on another man's wrists, while he danced with my wife like he'd been waiting for that song his entire life. My name is Mariel. Yeah, it sounds strange. I've heard all the jokes. My grandmother chose it. She said it meant bright sea. I'm 41 from a small town in Nebraska, but I've been living in Dalton Springs, Arizona, ever since I married a woman named Karen Blake, or Corey, as she likes to call herself now. She has a laugh that can cut through any room, light, clear, a little wild, like wind chimes swaying in a storm. I used to be the reason behind that laugh. I remember it in my bones. But somewhere between raising a daughter, fixing a roof twice, and watching my career die under the word restructuring, I slipped into the background of her life. Last Friday, she asked me to go to a benefit gala her office was hosting. I didn't expect it. She usually hated having me around her co-workers, said I didn't fit the image, but that night she said it might be good for us. Her voice had that forced brightness that makes you want to believe, and I did. I mistook her nervous energy for hope. I spent half an hour fighting with a blazer I borrowed from my neighbor because none of mine fit anymore. I stood in front of the mirror, trimming the back of my neck with clippers that died halfway through. I even practiced smiling, that kind of easy, effortless smile that says, I still belong. But even then, I knew I didn't. The ballroom was all marble floors and golden light, people laughing too loud into champagne flutes, men in suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, women gliding past like they owned the air, and then there was her, Corey. She looked stunning, black backless dress, hair pinned in an intricate knot, perfume that hit me like a memory I didn't know how to hold. She moved with that untouchable confidence that used to terrify and captivate me all at once. She didn't look at me, not really. She gave me a small nod, a formal one, like I was a coworker she had to acknowledge. And then she saw him, tall, confident, expensive. His suit fit like it was stitched from silence. Those damn cufflinks, silver engraved with some kind of crest I didn't recognize, caught the light as he lifted his glass. And just like that, the air changed. Corey straightened, smoothed her dress, and something shifted in her eyes. A glint, a charge, something I hadn't seen directed at me in years. I asked quietly, "Who's that?" "Just a colleague," she murmured. "Relax, Mariel. Relax." That word stuck to my teeth like dust. Minutes later, they were dancing. Not a group number, not a casual step. A slow, intentional, close dance. His hand rested on the small of her back like he'd earned it. Her smile returned, the one that used to be mine. I stood there, holding a half-warm drink, staring at the silent auction board like it could save me. People walked past, glancing at me with that mix of sympathy and gossip that cuts deeper than any words. I could feel my face burning. I felt like a ghost, watching my own life continue without me. When the song ended, I moved toward her. I didn't even think. "Can we talk?" I asked, touching her arm. She looked at me like I'd interrupted a scene. "If you go back out there and dance with him again," I said quietly, "we're going to have a serious—" She cut me off with an eye roll. "A serious what, Mariel?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I didn't even know what I wanted to threaten. A conversation, a divorce, a reality check. But she didn't wait. She turned away and walked straight back into his arms. I stood there, watching, feeling the last pieces of us slip through my hands like sand. That was the moment I knew, not suspected, not wondered, knew that she didn't care if I was watching. Maybe she wanted me to. I left, not like a movie hero, no grand exit. I just walked out quietly, like a man who finally understood he was no longer the main character in his own story. Outside, the air was cold and still. The music turned into a muffled echo behind the glass walls. I stood in the parking lot, pretending to check my phone because I needed to look like I belonged somewhere, but I didn't. 10 minutes passed, 15. I almost drove away. The key was in the ignition, but some small piece of decency, or maybe denial, made me wait. We'd driven there together. I told myself I'd wait for her. When the passenger door opened, she slid in like she owned the air between us. Her eyes were blazing, defensive. "You just left, at my event. Do you have any idea how that looks?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her. "Corey, who is he?" "You mean Owen?" she said, almost mocking. "He's a director. He's important. We were making connections." "Connections," I repeated. "Is that what they call it now?" Her eyes went cold. "Don't start, Mariel." "I watched you dance with him like I wasn't even there," I said. "You didn't look at me once." Her silence said everything. "You invited me to play the good husband, to keep up appearances," I said, "but you didn't want me there." She turned away. "This isn't the place." "When is then?" I asked. "Because if I hadn't said anything, you would have kept dancing, maybe even followed him upstairs." She snapped her head toward me. "How dare you? Because I'm not blind." I cut her off. "You treat me like furniture. I sit in the background while you shine for strangers and come home smelling like a perfume I never bought." She went still. Then coldly, "Then why are you still here?" That was it. Not a question. A dare. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. She was already gone. I wanted to shout, to shake her, to ask what happened to us, to the laughter, the road trips, the life we built, brick by brick. But instead, I started the car. We drove home in a silence that felt like a wall. She didn't say a word when we parked, not when we went inside, not when I walked upstairs alone. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling until 3 a.m., feeling something crack inside me. It wasn't rage or sadness, just a cold, heavy clarity. She was hiding something, and I needed to know what. I moved to the guest room, the junk room, as we used to call it before everything went quiet. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my clothes, the tie around my neck like a noose I'd forgotten to untie. I stared at nothing, replaying that dance, that smile, those cufflinks. By 4 a.m., I stopped pretending to rest. I walked into the hall. Our bedroom door was closed. Behind it, no sound, just a wall between a man falling apart and a woman who had already left. Then I saw it, her phone lying on the dresser. She never left it behind. Ever. It glowed under the nightlight, like it was calling me. I didn't hesitate. My hands moved before my conscience could speak. I picked it up, unlocked it. Same passcode she'd used for years. I opened her messages. The first thread was named Owen. I should have stopped. I should have put it down. But I needed to know whether I was crazy or whether she had made me crazy. Owen: "You sure bringing him is a good idea?" Corey: "He's harmless. It keeps appearances." Owen: "I don't want to hold back tonight." Corey: "Then don't. He'll get the message eventually." I felt my stomach turn. My hands went numb. But I kept scrolling. Late night texts, photos, messages that felt too easy, too comfortable. Him holding her hand across a table. Her in a mirror, buttons undone. Months of this. A life I wasn't invited to. She wasn't in love with him. She was in love with being free of me. At 5:12 a.m., she walked into the hall. I didn't have time to put the phone down. She saw it, saw my face, froze. I didn't yell. I just asked, "How long?" She looked at the floor like she was calculating damage. "About 4 months," she said. But it wasn't supposed to be a thing. It just filled something I didn't know was empty. I laughed. The kind of sound that doesn't come from humor, but from something breaking. You know what I miss, Corey? I miss being missed. She stepped forward. Mariel, I didn't mean. Yes, you did, I cut her off. You just didn't mean for me to find out. Her phone buzzed in my hand. A new message from Owen. So, did he figure it out, or is he still playing house? She didn't grab for it, didn't cry, didn't say a word. She just turned and walked back into the bedroom. And in that silence, I understood everything. She wasn't sorry. She never would be. She was just sorry that I'd stopped pretending. I didn't sleep that morning. I couldn't. My mind kept replaying the same scenes on a loop. The texts, her face, the way she turned her back on me without a second of hesitation. I sat there on the edge of the guest bed, staring at my suitcase, thinking about what you pack when you're leaving a life behind. Do you take photos, clothes, or just your sanity? Everything felt too heavy to touch. Around 7:30, I heard her in the kitchen. She was making breakfast. The sizzle of eggs, the click of plates, the hum of our old coffee maker, all of it so normal that it felt wrong. The same woman I just caught sending messages to another man was frying eggs like it was any other morning. I stood at the top of the stairs, staring down, wondering if she was doing it out of guilt or habit. I walked into the kitchen. She didn't look up. She just said, "Do you want toast?" as if nothing had happened. Her hair was still in that messy knot from the gala, strands falling over her neck. She was wearing my sweatshirt, the one I used to love seeing her in on lazy Sundays. Now it looked like an illusion, a costume of comfort. "You're making toast?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "Figured you might be hungry." Hungry. That was the word she chose. Not sorry. Not let's talk. Just that. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "I read everything," I said. "You can't just fry eggs and pretend it's gone." She finally looked up. Her face was calm, almost too calm. There was no fear, no guilt, just acceptance. She'd already had this conversation in her head a dozen times. She was just waiting for me to catch up. I sat down at the table, the same table we bought after our second move. I remembered building it myself, staining the wood, joking that we'd never need another one because this table could survive anything. Now it felt like it was watching us fall apart. "You could have told me," I said. She shrugged. "You would have left. That was your choice." Then she said something that hit like a knife. "I didn't think you'd care this much." I stared at her. "You didn't think I'd care?" I laughed. A dry, empty sound. "I've loved you since I was 29, Corey. I stayed through the worst years of our lives. 2 miscarriages, your panic attacks, the career changes, the nights we sat on the floor, wondering how to pay bills, and you think I didn't care?" She looked down at the floor. "I didn't mean it like that." But she did. I could see it. She'd stopped expecting me to feel anything a long time ago. After a long silence, I asked, "So what now?" She whispered, "I don't know. Do we talk to someone? Maybe a therapist?" I shook my head. "No, we're past that." She frowned. "Then what are we?" I looked at her. Really looked. The woman I married was gone. What sat across from me was a version that had outgrown us both. "We're 2 people who used to be in love," I said, "and now we're just afraid to start over." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't believe them. I'd seen her cry before. This wasn't that. This was regret for being caught. I stood up and left the room. I didn't slam doors, didn't shout, just walked away because words had stopped meaning anything. Love doesn't die loudly. It fades like a song you've heard too many times until the silence is easier to be around. The next few days dragged on like wet cloth. Corey moved around the house like nothing had happened. She made coffee, checked emails, changed into her running clothes, left for her workouts. I stopped asking where she really went. Maybe she stopped lying because she knew I already knew. I started documenting things. I know how that sounds. Petty, paranoid. But when the person you love becomes a stranger, You start gathering proof that you're not crazy. It started small. One morning, her gym bag was half open by the door. Inside was a receipt from a hotel bar 2 towns over, 2 glasses of Pinot Noir, 1 shrimp cocktail. Same night, she said she was at a self-defense class. I took a photo and said nothing. Later, I checked our joint account. I hadn't looked in months. I found charges that didn't belong, jewelry stores, spas, florists, in places she never mentioned. I didn't need to ask who they were for. None of it ever made its way home. Each discovery felt like another board breaking under my feet, but I was done falling. I was preparing. For the first time in years, I saw my life clearly. No filters, no denial. I made an appointment with an attorney in a different county, a man named Vernon Callahan, older, quiet, straightforward, the kind of man who looked like he'd seen every story end the same way. I brought him a folder, photos, texts, bank statements, receipts, everything. He didn't react. He just looked at me and asked, "Do you want revenge or do you want freedom?" I sat there for a while. It was a simple question, but it split me open. I wanted both. I wanted her to feel the empty nights, the silence, the constant self-doubt. But more than that, I wanted peace. I wanted myself back. I want out, I finally said. He nodded. Then we'll make sure she doesn't take the house. When I left his office, the sun felt different, not brighter, just honest. That night, she came home late again. Makeup fresh, smile fake. She stopped dead when she saw me sitting in the living room, folder on the table. I wasn't watching TV, I was just waiting. "We need to talk," I said. She stood there, still in her coat, eyes scanning for an escape. I pointed to the folder. "I know about Owen, the hotel, everything." For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes, not regret, fear of consequences. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I looked at her, the woman I used to think I'd grow old with, and said, "Nothing right now." She blinked. "Nothing?" "Because I want you to sit in this house, eat your eggs, sleep in that bed, and know that I'm already gone. Not physically, not yet, but you lost me." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No words came. I felt a strange calmness, the kind that comes after a storm. The truth was out, and it belonged to me. I didn't leave immediately. That would have made it easy for her to play the victim. Instead, I stayed. I moved through the house quietly, like a ghost with a pulse. She didn't know how to handle that. I started removing pieces of myself bit by bit. I scanned documents, moved passwords, cleared old files. I took my clothes out in small batches, a few shirts in my gym bag, my favorite boots to the office. She didn't notice, or maybe she did, and she was too afraid to ask. One morning, while she was in the shower, I took down our wedding album from the shelf. I flipped through the pages slowly. Her smile at the altar used to be my favorite image in the world. Now it felt like a prop, a promise made for show. A week later, I called Vernon again. We set the date for serving papers. Thursday morning, her wellness day, she'd be home alone. No drama, no audience, just the end. But life has a way of complicating endings. Our daughter came home. Jenna, 20, smart, funny, too kind for a world like this. She texted me the day before. "Surprise visit. Don't tell Mom." I felt my heart drop into my stomach. She still believed we were happy. She still bragged about us to her friends, the couple that made it work. When she arrived, Corey turned into a performance artist. Lasagna in the oven, board games on the table, laughter that felt scripted. And Jenna bought it because she wanted to. She talked about school, about a guy named Travis she wasn't ready to call her boyfriend. And I sat there nodding, knowing that in less than 48 hours I'd shatter the image she still believed in. That night, she asked to sleep in her old room. I helped her unpack, listened to her playlist, soft songs, half-remembered lyrics. When I closed her door, I stood in the hallway staring at the family photos on the wall. Vacations, birthdays, All the moments that used to mean something. They felt like photos of strangers now. Corey came out of our bedroom in her robe. Her voice was low. "You're not really doing this, are you? Not with Jenna here?" "I didn't choose the timing," I said. "You chose everything else." She bit her lip, trying to summon tears. But I was done falling for scenes. You don't get to cheat and then ask for a delay because the audience showed up early. I turned away and walked down the stairs. That night, I made my final plan. The morning I gave her the envelope, the sky was heavy and low, the kind of quiet gray that hangs before rain. The house felt different, too still, too aware. I stood in the kitchen holding my old coffee mug from our road trip to Oregon, back when we still laughed at nothing and believed the world was ours. It felt strange, like I was holding an artifact from another life. Corey came in, wearing jeans and a tank top, hair still wet from her shower. She looked casual, unaware that this morning would tear the rest of our story in half. Jenna was upstairs getting ready to meet a friend for brunch, humming along to music that drifted down the hall. She had no idea that her parents were about to collapse quietly beneath her feet. I set the envelope on the counter between us. She stared at it like it was a weapon. "What is this?" she asked. "You know what it is," I said. She didn't touch it at first. She just looked at me, eyes sharp, breath controlled, like she was trying to read whether this was real. "Don't do this," she said finally. "Not while Jen's here." "I didn't plan her visit," I replied. "But I'm done waiting. I'm done pretending." She broke the seal. Her hands shook slightly as she unfolded the papers. I watched her eyes move across the text, the dates, the signatures, the finality of it all. Her face went pale. "Are you really going through with this?" "It's already filed," I said. "It's done." She set the envelope down, arms crossed, trying to rebuild her power. "So what now? You get to play the victim after everything I gave up for this family?" I stared at her. "You didn't give anything up, Corey. You traded me away in silence. You just never thought the return policy would work both ways." She flinched. Then her voice rose, an edge of desperation hiding under control. "I gave you stability, support. Where was Owen when your uncle died? When you lost your job? When Jenna visited last year? You think he would have held everything together like I did?" I felt heat build in my chest, not rage, but something colder, heavier. "And yet," I said slowly, "you were texting him in our house, laughing about me, bringing me to that gala so he could watch you parade around like I didn't exist." She didn't deny it. She just looked away, her face a mask of control that was starting to crack. And then, from upstairs, Jenna's voice cut through the room. "Hey, you guys okay down there?" Corey's eyes snapped toward the stairs, panic, pure and sharp. "Don't," she said under her breath. "You tell her, and I swear I'll never forgive you." I stared back. "I'm not going to destroy her view of you. Not today, but someday, when she asks, I'll tell her everything. All of it." Her lips trembled. "She'll hate me." "Then you'll know how it feels," I said, and walked away. I climbed the stairs, knocked on Jenna's door, and told her I was going out for a bit. She smiled, unaware, gave me a hug, and told me to bring back cookies if I saw the farmer's market. That simple hug felt like the last thread holding me to the life I was about to leave behind. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. It was Vernon. "Looks like she read the terms," he said. "Her lawyers already contacted me." "Good," I answered. "I want it clean, no kids involved. She doesn't get the house." "You keep your retirement," he replied. "This won't turn into a war unless she makes it one." "She won't," I said. "She only fights when she thinks she can still win." There was a pause. Then he said, "You've handled this better than most men I've seen in your position." I took a deep breath. "Thanks," I said. "I'm not sure it feels like handling, but I'm still standing." When I hung up, I realized how true that was. I hadn't just filed papers. I had drawn a line between who I was and who I refused to be anymore. 3 months later, the house was mine. Legally, physically, emotionally. The silence that once felt like a weight now felt like air. The rooms that used to hold her presence now held breath, music, the smell of fresh coffee. I repainted the bedroom. I moved the furniture. I let the light in again. Corey moved out 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. There were no tears, no scenes. She packed efficiently, precisely, like a business trip she never intended to return from. She didn't hug me goodbye. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just closed the door, paused for a second on the porch, and left without a word. I stood there for a while after the sound of her car faded. I half expected to feel relief, but what I felt was different, a stillness I didn't recognize. It wasn't emptiness, it was space. A few weeks later, Jenna came home again. I didn't know what to expect, anger, confusion, questions, but she just sat at the kitchen table, hands around a mug of tea, and said, "You don't have to explain, Dad. I saw it coming. I just didn't want it to be true." I nodded. Neither did I. She reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm proud of you," she said. Those 4 words broke something in me and healed it at the same time. Because for the first time in years, someone saw me, not as half of a marriage, not as a failure, but as a person who chose himself. After that, I started hiking again. There's a trail just outside Dalton Springs, tall pines, cool air, dirt that smells like rain. A small group meets there every Saturday morning. We run, mostly in silence. No one asks too many questions. I don't offer answers. There's a woman named Elise who runs with us. She's quiet, grounded, the kind of person who listens with her whole face. She doesn't ask about my past, and I don't ask about hers. We've had coffee twice. No expectations, no labels. Just 2 people learning how to smile again without guilt. Some nights, I sit on the porch with a book and a blanket, staring up at the stars. I used to do that with Corey back when we still believed in forever. We'd make wishes, promises, plans. Now, I just sit in silence, letting the night breathe around me. I don't wish anymore. I thank. I thank the universe that I found the strength to walk away from a love that stopped loving me back. I thank the man I used to be for holding on long enough to learn how to let go. And I thank the stillness for teaching me that sometimes peace doesn't arrive with closure. It arrives with distance. And here's the part I never expected. I didn't fall apart. I didn't become bitter. I found myself. One quiet, painful, liberating step at a time. So if you're reading this and you're sitting in a life that feels like a performance instead of a partnership, I won't tell you what to do, but I will tell you this. You don't have to stay invisible just because someone stopped looking at you. You're allowed to matter. You're allowed to start over, even if it begins with a single step into the unknown and a door that finally closes behind you.